Okay, Andrew, thank you very much for agreeing to speak to me. Now, I came to your presentation at IATEFL this morning, and I thought it was very good indeed. Thank you very much for that. Could you give me a brief summary of your feelings about peer observation and the results of your research? Could you tell us a little bit about how you conducted your research and what the results were?
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you for coming along this morning. It was good to see so many people coming to the presentation. My presentation was about a research project that I completed as part of my MA dissertation last year. And my research question was, do qualifications and experience affect teachers' attitudes to peer observation? I started off the presentation by just defining peer observation, because these days we hear lots of different definitions about this quite complex subject, and I also looked at how I defined qualifications and experience. The short answer to my research question was no. Qualifications and experience do not affect teachers' attitudes towards peer observation. Sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but was their attitude to peer observation largely positive? It was exceptionally positive. The reason I chose to investigate this subject is because I've worked in a lot of private language schools where I've heard very similar comments about peer observation. Why are we doing this? Is it compulsory? Who's going to observe me? And that's what prompted me to investigate where these attitudes were coming from. And more specifically, is there a link between qualifications and experience and peer observation? So I was actually quite surprised with the results of my small-scale study. 58 people, I think it was about 58 people, took part in the research, and yes, almost unanimous positive support for peer observation as a tool for professional development. A couple of areas came up that maybe we have to look at a bit further. Should it be compulsory? There was a bit of split opinion about that. Should there be a formal or an informal policy? And finally, it's getting to the end of a long day.
Was it the question of whether people should be taught about feedback?
Exactly. And in fact, this was actually the most controversial area. Should we train teachers to give feedback? In my interview data, I found that a lot of people were concerned about the ability of less experienced teachers to give feedback. A lot of people seem to suggest that more experienced teachers could give feedback, but less experienced teachers couldn't. I'm not sure I accept that argument, and certainly the literature doesn't accept that point of view. We all need to be trained to give feedback, and if we're going to have a successful policy of peer observation, my advice would be train all those involved to give constructive feedback. It doesn't have to be a long drawn-out process, but at least everybody has a common starting point.
And I think most people were agreed, were they not, in your survey, that some kind of formal, some set form, some formal procedure is quite desirable.
Openness and trust were key words that came out of the research. People need to feel that peer observation is taking place within an environment that is supportive and constructive rather than judgmental. And one way to ensure that happens is by having a standard set of procedures. My advice, and indeed the advice of the existing literature, is to have focus groups that define some common ground, how it's going to take place, and then everybody can follow a common set of rules and everyone knows what's going to happen. There's not going to be any surprises.
Thank you very much indeed, that's great.
Thanks for your time, Helena. Bye.
Okay.